thank you for all of you for coming out tonight. Last week, our staff provided information regarding the Light Edge proposal. Many of you may have attended or watched online or aware of it, and we just appreciate your ongoing interest in this topic. As you can imagine, Council continues to receive emails, and I can assure you those emails are being read. And tonight, it's your turn to share your personal input with City Council. And I want to express again my appreciation for everyone who did come last week. You demonstrated respect for each other and civil interaction, and we ask that would continue. So tonight, it's important that we hear from you on two different things. One is the Light Edge proposal, which is they call a co-location data center, and the other one is data centers in general as Council considers policy. As was mentioned last week, and as some of you may be aware, there are multiple sites in the city that are zoned industrial where data centers can be built. That includes Prairie View Industrial area out on East Lincoln Way and a few other sites that are located within the city. Consequently, Council is interested in hearing your feedback on data centers in addition to the Light Edge project. So as when we break into groups and start talking, we'll be asking for clarification, your comments specifically about the proposed project or data centers in general. There'll be no Council deliberations tonight. There's no voting going on. There's no decision. Tonight is solely a time to listen to you. If you have questions, we'll be writing those questions down also. However, neither Council nor staff will respond to questions. We just need to aggregate what questions you might have. And those who are unable to attend tonight, that might be listening or watching this in arrears, you can email Council at mayorcouncil@cityofames.org. So, just want to highlight what are our expectations tonight. First of all, we welcome all feedback and viewpoints. We ask that you respect every person's opinions, whether you agree with them or not. We want everyone to have the opportunity to participate. Provide your opinions and concerns as specifically as possible. And for example, if just someone says, I just don't like the fact that they use water, we would ask, can you be more specific about that? Because we want to make sure we understand what is it specifically that you have a concern about. And again, we have two topics, the Light Edge proposed data center plan and policy about future data center construction. So on the screen tonight, you'll see the agenda for tonight. We're going to start with some general questions in the auditorium here. One of our assistant city managers, Pa Van Goldbeck, will walk us through that portion shortly. Then we're going to go ahead and transition to the gymnasium, and some will stay in here and break out into small groups. In the small groups, we're going to have about 60 minutes to 75 minutes to allow you to provide your input. Actually, there's 6 council members and myself. There'll be more than 7 groups, but there'll be a council member or me in some of the groups, and then some of the other groups we will have just staff members. The council members will be listening and asking questions, seeking to facilitate the conversation, not the conversation, but the input. And the staff member will be recording your feedback. So we'll also have an optional written comment forms available in case you have additional thoughts that you prefer not to share out loud or that you think about during the time. After the small group discussion, we'll transition back to the large auditorium here, where council members and a staff people will report out the major themes that were shared in the small groups. And the notes from tonight will be collected, captured, and made available online so everyone has access to them. Then prior to leaving, we will go ahead and I'll ask if there's anyone who has anything that was not mentioned or wants to have a point of clarification. We're going to allow 15 minutes, and we're going to ask for it to be very brief and succinct. and then we'll talk about our next steps. So with that, I'll turn it over to Pa, and she's going to go ahead and walk us through the next phase of our input section. Again, thank you for coming.
All right, so for this next portion of the night, I will need your help. We will be using your cell phone, so if you have a cell phone, please pull that out. We're going to do a live poll just so that we get a sense of who's all in the room, so we know who's all here and get to know you a little bit more. So we're going to, pretty shortly here, we'll put up the QR code up there. You can scan that, and it will take you to access our survey to do the live poll. If you got a feedback form, I know we were running short on some of those. There's also the QR code on the top right of that form, so you can also scan it there as well. So on your phone, you should be able to see some questions that you're getting asked, so please go ahead and fill that in, and we'll see the results as they go in. So we'll give you a couple minutes because it's a big crowd, so we can see that folks are still entering their responses. So if you're having service issues, you're not able to get on your cell phone, you can also write your responses on the back side of your feedback form, and we will tabulate that in. All right, so the next question, did you attend the City Council meeting on June 23rd or watch the meeting online? So the black is yes, and the green is no. So we'll give that a couple minutes too, just so you know who all is in the room. Okay, so about half and half. We'll move on to the next question. Have you read any staff material regarding the light edge proposal? So go ahead and respond to that one. Wow, so lots of you have. All right, it's still going, so we'll give it another few seconds here. So the majority of you have, 76%. All right, we'll go to the next question. How do you feel about the light edge proposal? So supportive for it, not supportive, undecided. Well, okay, please don't clap. Let's try to get through this. All right, some folks are still. So while there's an overwhelming number of folks not supportive of it, I do want to note there are folks who are supportive of it too. So just be mindful of that when you're in your small groups. Again, we want to create a safe space for people to express their opinions tonight. Okay, the next question. So how do you feel about a data center generally being in Ames? All right, let's go on to the next one. So what words come to mind when you hear data center? So you should be able to type in a couple words there to your screen, and it will form a word cloud. So I just want to note too, we will make all of this available to the public after the fact. You'll be able to see this a little bit more in detail as well tomorrow. I think our goal is to get it up by noon tomorrow. All right, we'll give you a little bit more time here. Okay. All right, and then our last question, I believe this is our last question here, is just where do you get your information about local issues? So please type that in as well. Okay, so here we're seeing friends as a bigger word, city website, word of mouth, Facebook, City of Ames, Iowa State Daily. Okay, all right. Well, thank you. Thank you for participating in that portion of it. As Mayor mentioned, we're going to break out into small groups now. We anticipated a large crowd, but not this large, so you'll have to bear with us as we transition into the gym. So I'm going to give you instructions on doing that. We have 8 stations in the gym, and I think the easiest way to do it is to just take it row by row. So please stay seated until you are dismissed. So each station will have a staff person assigned to it. So your staff person, I'll call their names in a second to raise their hand. So this first group right here, maybe the first 4 rows, if you want to follow Rich, who is standing right there, he's waving at you right now. Please follow him, and we will move. Okay. So, okay. Okay. If it is difficult for you to transition for mobility purposes, you can also choose to stay in here. We'll also have groups in here. So if it's difficult to move to the gym, go ahead and stay seated, and we will help with that.
Residents joined small groups for 90 minutes of discussion with City Council and City staff.
Thank you for your patience. What we're going to do is we're going to have each council member will share some of their key takeaways. Again, please don't be offended if you think, oh, you didn't get mine. Well, they're all important. We're trying to capture the essence, even from my standpoint. Boy, how do I condense all the great input and ideas? I have a question. How many of you out there are in high school? Stand up. These 2 young ladies were in my group, and they were so eloquent and got right to the point, and I really appreciate you both coming, and I appreciate everyone else coming. I think these are future leaders of our community, so it's just fantastic. So we're going to start with Bronwyn's going to start, and we're going to go around. This will take a little bit. I hope to be done by 8:30. It might go a little longer than that, and then we'll get the summary, and then Paul has a few things to share, and then we'll talk about next steps, and then we'll adjourn. So, Bronwyn, go ahead.
Okay, thank you. All right, everyone. Thanks for coming out today. I'm happy to see so many people here giving their input. So for my group, I'm going to try to summarize what we talked about. I apologize if I miss anything, but I'm going to try to recap most of the thoughts that were introduced. So we definitely had a lot of talk about environmental concerns. The climate action plan and how this affects that. So again, that had to do with a lot of different the climate action plan has to do, of course, with carbon impact, but that would be both regional power and local power demands. So we talked about that, about folks didn't want to see Ames municipal power costs going up, but also they were noticing a trend of regional power costs going up. And that was so both Light Edge specifically and just in general about data centers. So that was a concern. We heard about other environmental concerns, heat, noise. That's come up a number of times. And then diesel generation as backup power and the noise and air pollution issues, questions around that. We heard concerns about wastewater, heavy metals and biocides and other anti-corrosives that might get used in a closed-loop system. People wanted clarification on what those are, or want us to look more at that. What those components are, can our plant treat those, and things like that, but also just concern about the impact of those in our watershed. There were concerns about, I would say, industry mistrust was a common theme that I heard. So both with Light Edge specifically and in general. So what can we? And a lot of themes came up around that. So what can we do? Or what are guarantees or enforcement mechanisms that we might have that if we were to pursue something that we could make sure that they do what they say, or what enforcement mechanisms do we have if they don't? Future use of that site. So there were a couple of comments that were sort of a foot in the door kind of concept where what if they develop on that site and then they want more there? What if they want more building footprint? What if they want more power, more water than they're saying they want currently? So that was a theme that we heard. When doing cost-benefit analysis, that we talk about the benefits, not just economic benefits, but also that we think about environmental costs too, and social issues, and how those how we think about costs in terms of those things too, and not just economic. And then let's see what else. There's a lot more. Measuring resident thoughts on this. So polling the public in a scientific way on this topic, and how we might do that in the future or for other topics. That was a question. Transparency with government. That was a theme that came up, and that measuring citizen input kind of spoke to that too. Also our process for coming to decisions. There's a question about how that process works and how it will work now moving forward, and I think we will talk about future steps yet as we conclude this meeting. Let's see, there's more. The effect of having a data center in town with potential incoming Iowa State students or faculty, like the reputation that that having a data center might bring, and maybe that being a detriment to people considering coming to Iowa State. Asking for proof. Again, this touches on that industry mistrust element. So asking for infrastructure improvements up front if we're going to, and other guarantees that we might have. And then a number of comments about developing policy in general, and folks were afraid of what it might mean if we let Light edge in before developing policy. So that was a very common theme in my group too. And then independent analysis. So that was another thing people touched on. So when we are, if we're looking at Light Edge specifically or policy more generally, to make sure we're asking for independent, unbiased experts in the fields that we're talking about. So environmental impacts, and asking folks who have data centers in their area what their experience has been with them. That was a thing we heard too. There's a lot. So again, that's just kind of recapping. I'll give other folks a chance to talk. We will take these sheets and we will aggregate all of this. So everyone's comments will get recorded, and then folks turned in sheets to me too, so those comments will get recorded from our group as well. So thank you.
Okay. Yeah. So thanks to my group. We had a very robust conversation. Felt like everyone had a chance to share their thoughts. Just for the sake of time and for you guys, I think I'm going to just try to cover, maybe emphasize some things that weren't emphasized as much in yours, Bronwyn, and then I don't know, because otherwise it's going to be fairly redundant. So a lot of good discussion about cost-benefit analysis and making sure that's done prior to having a third party, someone outside to evaluate the environmental impacts of this. A lot of discussion about the pacing of this. My group talked at several points about slowing the process down, making sure that there was more student involvement, and maybe even having a referendum to allow the entire community to have input. A lot of discussion that.
Okay. We saw in the results that most of you are not in favor of the data center. We understand it, okay? So I just ask, please be courteous, let people talk. We understand that you're supportive of that. It's been a great evening. I appreciate all the decorum and the civility that people have demonstrated. But let's just go ahead and so we can get through this process uninterrupted. Thank you.
There was some good discussion about making sure that what we do is consistent with our climate action plan, and so being very specific in connecting those lines. We had a little bit of discussion about how AI plays a factor in this, and so if we knew that the center was processing AI versus not, and how that would impact the analysis. Concerns that the project isn't creating enough jobs. One that I thought was interesting was that because of the complexity of the contract that would be required, maybe having an outside law firm be involved in making sure that the city's interests are protected. And then we had some discussion about changing the location. So if we're going to do this, find a more remote location away from residents and from the Tedesco Park. So those were some of the ones that were slightly different. Thanks. Oh, one other thing that I was going to mention. So for those of you who were in the auditorium and you didn't have a chance to interface specifically with a city council member, again, we're going to be visiting with staff. We're going to get the same feedback that they receive. So don't just know that we're going to receive all that.
And our group had many of the same comments, but I'll do sort of a few high-level ones. From the energy generation to the wastewater processing, there were a lot of questions about electricity, about wastewater, about water usage generally, and what that effect would be on citizens in terms of the costs to them for those utilities, as well as the impact on their quality of life. Many are against AI generally and feel like that is a value that they would like to express through any decisions about a data center here. There were questions about, will we do studies and pay attention to the research around potential health and environmental consequences? And will we think about the post-life of a data center if at some point in the future that data center goes away? And what's our process for vetting companies like this and ensuring that what the community values is central to any type of light edge or data center in our community? And can we consider a data center that is homegrown, that meets the specific needs of the Ames community and its companies, and that is centered around our qualities of life?
Well, like the others, just want to thank all of you for coming out. I think we had some great conversation in my group, so thanks to all of you for participating, and for Dawn for doing the heavy lifting and taking all the notes. So our group had a lot of similar concerns. Most of what we discussed was sort of the outstanding questions that remain, and there are a lot. So some of it centered around who LightEdge is as a company. So who are they serving? Who would they serve if they were to come into this community? Are those customers local? Are they in the Midwest? Are they beyond that? Are they negotiating with other people, including Iowa State potentially? And when they do build, is there any commonality between the communities that they locate? Are the demographics similar where they build? Are those demographics similar to what we might find in the locations that they're looking at here, including near the airport? And then, like what's been mentioned, we talked a lot about the concerns around any potential negotiations that might come down the road and how we hold LightEdge or really any company accountable for what they say they will or will not do. One of the questions that came up was whether we might be able to do inspections of facilities to make sure that they are abiding by any terms that we put in place. There was quite a bit of discussion on closed-loop systems, what that looks like if it fails, how the effluent is treated, and then just the overall negative impacts to the people, the businesses, and the environment in the surrounding area, specifically in the Tedesco corridor. We talked about whether we might be able to require net zero construction, require renewable energy, and then again, just what those penalties might look like if we're able to hold them accountable for anything that they may or may not follow through on with the contract. And then just in terms of data centers in general, we talked a lot about electricity. If we get into instances of peak demand, are residents prioritized over large energy users like data centers? Are there any guarantees in place that future rate increases would be tied directly to residential use and not attributed to any additional megawatts that the data centers may use? I was trying to see if there's anything else here. And then just some more talk about moratoriums, not moving forward until we address all of the various impacts in city code, figuring out what we might learn from other communities in Iowa, whether they've allowed large data centers or smaller size facilities like what LightEdge is proposing, and then using outside experts as well in evaluating any decisions that we might make.
Hi, everyone. Thank you for coming. A lot of very similar themes in my group to some of the other groups. Noise concerns, proximity to residential and to Tedesco Learning Corridor, and the enforcement mechanisms that we would have with noise. An ongoing question was what assurances we could have to ensure the noise levels would not change in the future or our noise ordinance would change in the future. Environmental impact was a big one. Has or will an environmental impact report be done? What the increase in energy demand would be, what the costs to the ratepayers would be, water pollution, concerned about discharge of chemicals and the temperature of the discharge, and impacts on stormwater, both in South Ames and for data centers in general that might want to locate in Ames. A lot of discussions on what the benefits would be. Why would we want a data center in Ames? If we use public land, what is the benefit to the public? What are the number of jobs? Would they be hiring locally? Would they be doing training locally? What the lease rate would be if it was built on public land? How to ensure it would be built and used as proposed? What happens if it gets built partially? What happens if the data center leaves? Could the data center be sold, or could the airport property be purchased instead of leased? A lot of concerns about light edge transparency, like mentioned by others. How to know if they're lying to us. Concern about it being used for AI when they specifically said that it wouldn't be at the council meeting. And then some ongoing questions about both enforcement and accountability. How could we hold a data center in general accountable to our laws, requirements, other commitments, and what would differ if light edge built on private property? Which of these regulations would apply? And then also, how much would a data center increase the temperature of Ames, and any other climate action plan effects? I think that is most of what we covered here. And then I also wanted to thank the group that I jumped in with, Mindy, at the end. So we'll get to hear more of those comments from that group soon.
So I will follow suit and thank everybody for being here. This is the sort of involvement we would like to see anytime we have a big issue in Ames. So we really do appreciate it. Now, I'm coming at the end of this, so I have to say, well, John, I guess, is the end of this, but my group talked about many of the same things. I am not going to repeat all of those things, but I heard echoes in every council member's report back. The main concern of my group seemed to be the fact that we are moving ahead, or that we might move ahead with any data center without a policy in place. And so there were concerns about whether there could be a moratorium as we worked out a policy, and why would we ever want to put in anything without working out a policy first. Another unique concern, at least given what others have said, was concern about any super users of our finite resources. This isn't just about data centers. Are we being too limited in just focusing on data centers? And should we be considering other industries that are big water users or big electric users or create noise problems? And should we be thinking about that as we work through policies for data centers? I also heard a number of comments about those in our community who have medical concerns, who are dealing with those concerns at home, so they aren't at Mary Greeley or in some other environment where they might be assured to have generators in place, and how those medical needs at home might be prioritized in any sort of distribution of electric services, for example, especially if there were a natural disaster or many high heat days in a row, anything that strains our electric or our water resources. And another thing that I heard mentioned, but I want to put a little bit of a different spin on it, was concern about whether people can trust the city council and our government if, seeing a major outcry against data centers, we end up voting for a data center. How could they trust us? And along with that is we've got plans in place. 2040 plan, the climate action plan, and if any user like a data center is going contrary to those plans and we were able to vote in favor of that thing, how could anybody trust us? So those were the concerns that I heard that were not as represented in these other surveys. And thank you to my group for being so civil and having such a great discussion.
Yeah, I think we're hearing common themes in all the groups, and my group was I'm not going to repeat everything because it was all very, very similar concerns. And I will say that we had quite a robust conversation on the council decision-making process, and there was quite a bit of discussion about the process appearing to be rushed in relation to or comparison to some of the other things that we go through. And there was quite a bit of conversation too about the use of the facility. That is, if it's being used just for data storage, that's one thing. If it's being used for AI, that is a different situation, also. So I'm not going to reinforce everything. I reinforce everything which is being said, and it's interesting and encouraging that I think we're capturing the essence of the issues. So with that, what are the next steps? Our next council meeting is 2 weeks from tonight, and I anticipate this item may be on the agenda. I say may because this is going to be staff's going to be talking about it. How can you find out about what's on the agenda? You can go to the City of Ames .org. And we're going to be putting out information on our social media platforms. This is not being done so you don't know about it. And if you have questions or you say I can't find anything and when the next meeting is, just email us, Mayor Council at cityofames.org, and we can go ahead and get you to the link. But that is the next step, and Council will see. The information that you can see is posted on the typically Friday before council meeting at 5 p.m. And you go to the website, you can go to Mayor and Council or My Government, Mayor and Council meetings, and then you can download either this one particular item or the whole packet. You'll see exactly the same information that Council has. Be looking on the website for posted information, compilation of what our meeting was, and we'll go ahead and communicate that way as well too. Before we close, I'd like to make a personal appeal. Wasn't planning on doing this, but I am proud of Ames and how this meeting was conducted tonight. We had civility, some clapping. But this is the way local government should operate. And there's been a lot of really unpleasant communication on social media, a lot of unpleasant communication that we've gotten email-wise. I can vouch, I've been on council for 8.5 years. I'm proud of the 6 members of the council who really care about Ames. And they have the best interests in mind, and these are hard decisions that they go through. And so I would ask you to consider thinking the best of council, thinking the best of staff. Staff works to try and provide us with information. Think the best of your neighbors and people that may not agree with you. And when you think about posting something on social media, think about, is this really beneficial? Is this really going to be, helpful? It's just dogpiling doesn't do much, doesn't help much, essentially. I think we can do better. And I would appeal to everyone. And I'm not pointing at anybody. Maybe you're all not doing that, and that's fine. Then ask others who are, just to not do that. But we can work through these situations. Okay, thank you. All right. With that said, all right. If you have questions, all right. This is going to devolve. All right. this meeting. I entertain a motion to adjourn. Is there a move? All right. Is there a second? All right. All in favor of adjourning? All right. The meeting adjourned.